Chapter 10. Happiness Vibrations. Opas and Prithivi. The Tattvic Law of the universe, understood and applied in daily life and thought, makes living under the old regime of blind submission to unknown forces, generally believed to be malefic and always endangering health, an utter impossibility, really unthinkable. And the application of the law leads one to spiritual living by as direct a course as the flight of a homing pigeon. This radical change of thought is a regeneration, but concerning the transition, there are several things to be considered. In this pouring of the new wine of higher thought, or spiritual consciousness, which is the only real life, into the old bottles of disordered bodies, the only trouble arises from failure to cleanse the bottles properly. Progress will be delayed as long as impurities of any sort are permitted to pollute the temple of the living God. There are many kinds of pollution, and some of the most insidious society smiles upon as pleasures. Gormandizing, dissipation, and excesses of any sort which recklessly exhaust nerve strength, and pickling the body with nicotine till the stale, rank odors is from its pores, are of these. And habits which thus ignore the body's need of order, cleanliness, and purity within as without must be changed before the old bottle is fit for the new wine. It is a fatal mistake to belittle the body, for it is only when we have, through considering its needs rationally, molded it into a wholesome, perfect body that we can forget it and make of it the perfect instrument for the soul's activities for which it was divinely destined. When consciousness, in thraldom to the senses, is tossed hither and yon by fear and anxiety concerning the painful phenomena of physical disturbances, the soul is a prisoner in the darkest corner of the basement and is powerless to exercise control. It is reduced to the lowest servitude. But with recognition of the real status of the soul, the physical conquest is more than half achieved. There need be no ordeal of purification when the soul rules, no struggle of contending forces in the physiological chemistry. For as darkness is dissipated by light, so there can be neither impurities nor discord when the soul turns on the spiritual current. When there is painful physical conflict, it is a reflection of the mental state, a half-heartedness and wavering of faith and confidence from failure to comprehend the great truths involved, and hence inability to develop the latent soul force. The temptation to indulge in those pleasures of the senses which are physically injurious loses its fascination and is seen in its true light when the soul wakes to its real duty and the consciousness of its glorious power. This is the secret of the wonderful hypnotic influence that cues the desperately ill and releases youth from thraldom to petty vices that have enchained the will and threaten to wreck the moral being. By hypnotic suggestion, the soul is roused to consciousness of its power and duty, and the soul itself works the miracle. Moreover, the soul is receptive to suggestion in natural as in hypnotic sleep, for it is then released from the delusions and illusions of the senses, and is itself in touch with higher influences. Consciously, when its aspirations lead it thitherward, but under any and all circumstances more accessible to them, it is not, perhaps, generally recognized that the night time of the body is the daytime of the soul, which was the creed of Iamblichus, leader of the Neoplatonists. This is the divine opportunity for soul growth, the saving provision or means by which God retains at least a faint hold upon even the most wayward of his children. It explains, also, the inestimable value of the quiet period of introspection and uplifting thought which should precede the laying of the head upon the pillow for the night's rest. Incalculable harm is done to little children by sending them weeping and rebellious to bed, a sure prelude to restless, troubled sleep, with a sense of injury stabbing the heart and rankling in the mind. It is a preparation inviting all evil influences and repelling the good. Life's cares and the world's travail should be dropped with our garments, and we should trust ourselves with happy confidence to the blessed ministrations of the divine mystery of sleep, when the soul is offered release from its physical trammels. The thoughts which occupy the mind at the moment when sleep gently slips the cap of oblivion over our brains are of paramount influence not merely upon the rest which should ensue, but also upon the general health, because they determine in no slight degree the character of the tattvic flow and the equable balance of the two currents of prana. Opas and prithvi, the water and earth elements, are favorable vibrations whose flow we encourage by cheerfulness, serene poise, pleasure, satisfaction, and all pure forms of genuine happiness. We can thus, by governing our unruly thoughts, correct inherited surplusage of unfavorable vibrations and furnish the conditions that attract to us more fortunate ones. Remember always that it is the mind which dictates every action that disturbs the tattvic balance of the vital current, and that the endowment of free will makes every human being responsible for the thoughts that supply the impulse. The Tantric philosophers held the firm conviction that if the human mind were steadfastly fixed upon any object for a certain time, it was absolutely sure by very force of will to attain that object. Now, tell me, is there anything new under the sun? I must here enter my protest against this age-honored belief in the power of mind being in our day miscalled New Thought. Its proper name, giving it something of the dignity it's due in the revived cult which is mercifully encircling the earth, is higher thought, as distinguished from the stultifying bondage of materialism. It is older far than materialism, only a passing phase of wayward human struggles to know all things, marking the close of the Black Age. Why belittle the golden light of the truth by the term new, as if it were but half known and untried? The therapeutic effect of happiness has been long recognized, and every physician feels that his battle with disease is half won when he can keep his patient in a happy, cheerful frame of mind. Yet the vital significance of this favorable mental state has probably never been even surmised in Occidental practice. It will advance the science of medicine, purely empiric now, more than any discovery since Harvey's of the circulation of the blood, when it is known that instead of being itself a direct product from blood, as noted physiologists have maintained, the nerve force, called by them nervous ether, imparts to the blood all the energy and power it possesses. Indeed, Tantric philosophy pronounces the system of blood vessels only the shadow of the nervous system. All physiological effects are the products of nerve activity. Every atom of energy in the human being is transmitted by the nerves, and the form of that energy and the tempo of its vibrations, whether in rhythmic harmony or broken and discordant, is determined by the mind. Happiness is an upbuilding force only equaled by the sun's rays. It is sunshine in the heart, and it moves with a joyous rhythm that sings through all the nadis, nerves and blood vessels, of the body. Therefore, no medicine in the pharmacopoeia possesses the curative virtue of happiness vibrations. While anxiety, worry, depression, and excitement of the heated flurry sort cause varying forms of stagnation and disintegration, which disturb the balance of the tattvas, compel the flow of those which in excess are most inauspicious, and invite the very discord that fear dreads. Wrong thoughts and fear are the busiest builders of disease, suffering, and weakness that I know of, for they are the disruptors of the physiological balance of the tattvas. That is, their manifestation on the gross plane of activity. It is the perfect balance of the positive and negative currents of prana which maintains life. Know the law of the rhythmic breath in the well-poised, symmetrical, harmonious life. Prithvi and apas are the predominant tattvas. In temperature, prithvi is next to tejas, and apas is the coolest of the tattvas, exercising a restraint upon the two heating forces. as does Vayu in a lesser degree. The craving for water when overheated is perfectly natural and can be gratified with benefit only if the water be taken at a rational temperature, that is, cool, but not iced. Akosha, says Rama Prasad, has a state which neither cools nor heats. This state is, therefore, the most dangerous of all, and, if prolonged, causes debility, disease, and death. The lowering or raising of the body's normal temperature, a condition always watched with keenest anxiety by physician and nurse, is one of the first symptoms of disturbance in the balance of the tattvas. If, for example, tea just flows too long, it is robbing Prithivi, which follows it, of part of its assigned period of activity, and the temperature of the body rises above normal heat. And, in like manner, every tattva which exceeds its regular period prevents its successor from setting in when it should. And as everyone has its assigned field of activity, some organ where it is supreme, some elemental need which only that tattva can supply, discord, disorder, and disease quickly manifest themselves. This is the real office of pain, not disciplinary but beneficent, to give man immediate happiness vibrations in warning when he has transgressed the divine laws which secure his well-being. When the tattvas flow in rhythmic sequence and harmony, the delicate transition of one into another as they change is imperceptible. All ignoble emotions, as jealousy, envy, malice, copying criticism or fault-finding, and uncharitableness have their physiological effect in disturbances of the tattvas, compelling the prolonged flow of those unfavorable in terrestrial activities, and repelling the joy-giving and health-upbuilding vibrations. Of all the tattvas, Opas carries the breath deepest, and next to it comes Prithival, which discloses one secret of the inestimable benefit, the revivifying effect, derived from deep breathing, without which these beneficent tattvas are denied their fullest activity. The dominance of Apas in this function is confirmed by the great semi-lunar ganglion which supplies the diaphragm with its nerves of involuntary motion. Any injury to these nerves is marked by symptoms of suffocation, as in drowning, from which the patient sometimes dies suddenly. These two tattvas work together in complete harmony, under direct command from the soul, for the release of the body from the dominion of pain and disease. Opas, the universal solvent, slakes thirst, allays fevers, washes away the germs of disease when we will it to perform that office, and imparts endurance under the privation of hunger and thirst. The exercise of the held breath encourages in a marked degree the flow of Prithivi, and it is brought into great activity during pranayama. This tattva gives endurance to acts performed during its flow, increases the power of attention, stimulates memory, and strengthens the willpower. The prevalence of Prithivi imparts a golden tinge to the circle of light about our heads and to the brilliant play of light vibrations seen within. This inner light sometimes glows as brilliantly as the sunshine streaming through the purest atmosphere. It is a startling proof of the reality of this inner world, pulsing with golden glory, which we penetrate in concentration, when, after such experience, one opens the eyes upon a grey and gloomy sky. This has often happened to the writer, whose gaze, from her study windows, sweeps over acres of housetops to a hill-bound horizon 30 miles distant. At such times, the external gloom seems the unreality. Prithivi is sweet-smelling and sweet to the taste, while Opas is astringent, salty, and is itself the taster. That is, it stimulates the sense of taste. Opas is the predominant tattva in saliva, which AC counts for the extraordinary solvent power of this digestive fluid. It is gross injustice to the whole digestive canal to hastily cram into it a load of half-masticated food, thus depriving oppers of opportunity to perform its assigned work and thrusting upon the other tattvas an office they are unfitted for. Much of our food is put into the mouth in the prothivic solid state, and should be reduced to opper's liquid before we permit it to pass through the opper's gate of taste by swallowing it. Tejas works harmoniously after oppers, but when required to perform not merely double duty but work it is, chemically speaking, unable to do, the effort generates an overplus of fire. See Chapter 8. Gastric disturbances of the most serious character have often no other origin than this. Sudden deaths from nominal heart failure have been caused in this way. The pressure of the gas akasha and fire upon the heart arresting its action. The great benefit derived from walking is that through the exercise of the feet and their contact with the ground we are attuned to terrestrial forces. Not only does the prithvi tattva in the feet increase in strength, but throughout the body it works more actively in all its centers. It shares the influence of tejas in the solar plexus and stimulates the wholesome normal flow of this tattva in all its centers. As prithvi is active in the liver and in the lower intestine and kidneys, it can be readily understood that the exercise of walking is an unequaled stimulus to healthful digestion. If we eat pure foods adapted to our physical needs, and for the law of the rhythmic breath form the only voluntary process of digestion, mastication with the care its importance demands. A pause being regnant in the mouth and throat is naturally the prevalent tattoo in the function of speech and production of voice. As the semi-lunar current of this tattva passes over the muscles of the vocal cords, they are drawn up and contracted. The deeper the curves, the tenser the cords, and the variations in sound and tone are due to the modifications of this stimulating tattva through its permutations with the others. The anatomy of the larynx is a beautiful example of the cooperative action of the tattvas. 5 cartilages corresponding to the different tattvas enter into the construction of this marvelous vocal instrument, itself of triangular form blended with crescent-like curves. Be not confused by reading in Century Dictionary that there are 9 cartilages. All but the ring-like cricoid cartilage, the sayat of Akcha, which connects the larynx with the trachea, are in pairs, and the dictionary counts them separately, though this is not usual in physiologies. The spherical form of dew is recognized in the thyroid cartilage, Adam's apple, upon the action of which the intensity of the voice is determined. Tejas influence is seen in the triangles of the arytenoids, and that of prithvi is recognized in the hardest of these cartilaginous bodies, the cornicular happiness vibrations 115 laryngis. All these forms are rounded and modified by the prevalent oppers, and throughout the whole body its centers of activity can be traced in semilunar valves, ganglia, and cartilages. Concerning the changing tones of the voice in speech and song and their correspondingly changed colors, facts of much interest will be developed in a later chapter. The thoughtful student, however, must already realize something of the tattvic value of an agreeable tone in the speaking voice, of music in speech. Every word we utter has its effect upon the invisible forces around us. It has been said that to pronounce a word is to evoke a thought and make it present. The magnetic potency of the human speech is the commencement of every manifestation in the occult world. Remember the formative power of sound, ever building or disintegrating. It is a stupendous force when properly directed, for the subtle sound space atoms are everywhere, and pleasant speech is every human being's contribution to universal rhythm and harmony. But it affects immediately and most powerfully himself and his associates. Chapter 11. The atmospheric currents of prana. The Chinese artist Chikaku, living in the 5th century of our era, laid down 6 canons of art, of which the first and most important principle concerned itself with the life movement of the spirit through the rhythm of things. It is this life movement of the spirit that I shall now endeavor to make clear to you, disclosing the subtle bonds of rhythmic influence that connect every human being with the vast spaces of the universe and open to him its illimitable resources, if he but use them aright. The broad and general divisions of influence throughout the cosmos are positive and negative, and all life upon the earth reflects these in all of its component parts, whatsoever their diversity and complexity. Every human being is an electric battery with the regulation of poles and development of power under his own control. The physical organism is an exquisitely adjusted system of electrical and magnetic activities, every positive having its receptive negative, and every negative its corresponding positive. And the harmonious interaction of these establishes the keynote of the individual rhythm. But mark this well, the perfect balance of these electrical life forces can be maintained only through deep rhythmic breathing of the purest air. And I shall harp upon this string till no reader can ever forget it for a moment. Be not content with letting someone else breathe fresh air, laboring under the iniquitous delusion that you are too delicate, too sensitive to cold, to bear it, but insist upon having it yourself by day and by night. Not till you do this can you begin to manifest the real power, mental as well as physical, which is your natural inheritance. The want of fresh air is the father of all colds and most lung troubles, and the increased awakening to this truth is a most hopeful sign of the day. During the winter of 1905-6, one of the largest hospitals in New York adopted the plan of caring for all pneumonia patients on the roof in the open air, canvas awnings to screen from the wind being the only shelter. Every patient so treated recovered. During the 2 succeeding winters, this treatment has been greatly extended and with unvarying success. At the risk of tiresome iteration, I must again state that human beings do not normally breathe through both nostrils at the same time. And the breathing exercises already advised are not an arrogant effort to change the natural order of this life function, but a scientific attempt to restore it. Nor are they new inventions or devices originating in the Occident. The knowledge of correct rhythmic breathing and of the exercises in alternate breathing which purify the nerves, restore the disturbed balance of the life current, and preserve the harmony necessary for health, is the common heritage of the East Indian people. Down through the ages it has come to them, and the practice of breathing exercises precedes their daily devotions. The continued flowing of both positive and negative breath currents simultaneously marks extreme physical disturbance, a nullifying of life force, and the Tantrists believed it an indication of approaching death, showing the breaking up of the physical entity. An ocean of solar prana surrounds the great orb of day, and it is the particular state of its tattvic matter which sustains and keeps in its orderly rhythmic movements the whole solar system. As the vibrations of the solar prana approach the earth, they are arrested by a broad band of akasha which gives birth to the terrestrial fire. This forms a blue sphere about the earth limiting its movements. No explanation for this is given, but following the Tattvic Law, the natural inference is that the extent of the Earth atmosphere is limited by the conjunction of the solar and terrestrial currents, and akasha always emerging from such chemical affinity as when 2 tattvas meet and mingle. And from this akasha is naturally evolved the vayu forming our atmosphere, the color of which makes the cloudless sky blue. This is all the result of tattvic energy, and we must now grasp the sense of that subtle something which binds the tattvas together and directs their activities, ever carrying them onward, and never arrested by them. This is the spiritual essence, sustaining life from moment to moment, always pouring out from the great central dynamo under divine guidance, and born to us on the solar rays. No akashan or vayu can arrest it, since they are but forms of its ceaseless energy. Therefore, these rays, bearing the gift of life to Earth organisms, are merely refracted by these media and pass onward to exercise their organizing influence through terrestrial prana, a modification of the solar state. The positive and negative streams of the life current as they flow about our terrestrial sphere receive their direction, that is, are controlled in their course by the aspects which the sun, the moon, and the earth present to one another. In considering terrestrial life, the first division of these positive and negative influences is that of the seasons, reckoning the 6 months when the sun is north of the equator, a summer, during which the positive solar current flows from the North Pole to the south, and the negative in the opposite direction. When the sun sinks southward below the equator in the early autumn, the negative current sets in from the North Pole, and the positive current flows from the south. These two great divisions of time and of influence upon earth life are called by the Hindus the day and night of the Devas, or a Deva day and night. The Tantrists further divide the month into a Pitria day and night according to the moon's phases. The light half of the month, moonlight nights, being positive, or day, to the dark half which is its negative or night. Thus, you see, the positive current upon the physical plane of life, the sun breath, is always reckoned as the daytime of life, and the negative as the night time. The positive is the period of activity, the negative of the receptive brooding and preparation, by rest, for further activity. Of supreme importance, however, to earth life is this: as the earth turns upon her own axis while moving round the great life orb, other, more dominant and powerful, and more constantly alternating influences than the north and south currents are developed in terrestrial prana. These are the day and night currents controlled by the rising and the setting of the sun. Solar force is centered in the east, and the lunar, or sun shadow, in the west. And with the rising of the sun, every foot of the earth's surface as it comes under the influence of the solar rays receives the positive life current which streams westward along these rays. At the same time, the lunar, or negative, current flows eastward. And with the setting of the sun, the daily direction of these currents is exactly reversed. The sweep of this solar current of prana westward, being much stronger than the polar currents, deflects the northern current in the same direction, and the lunar current has a corresponding effect upon the negative current from the south, carrying it eastward. This is doubtless the reason that the needle of a compass and a magnet never point exactly to the poles, being deflected east of the North Pole and west of the south. The quiescent moment at dawn and in the twilight marks the sushumna, or conjunction of the two currents, when akasha prevails in the prana. It is for this reason that the Hindu so scrupulously takes his breathing exercises and meditates during these two periods, believing the influences of nature to be especially favorable. During the day the earth is negative, having yielded her positive radiations to the lunar, her rent moon breath of the brooding night. Dawn thus finds her in the condition to be receptively grateful for the invigorating rays of the positive or solar vibrations. But there are high tides and low tides of this influence according to the direction of the solar rays. And every particle of organic life upon the Earth's teeming surface is subjected further to the influence of minor currents from the Moon as she passes from one constellation to another in her eccentric orbit. This varying strength of the solar and lunar currents causes momentary changes in terrestrial prana which are reflected in our bodies. It is an ebb and flow, as it were, a forward and backward movement. And it is this great breath of the universe that gives the impulse to organic breathing. With its onrush we inhale, and the current of prana is sent to the farthest ends of the gross vessels, the nerve and blood channels of the physique. The succeeding moment imparts the backward impulse, and with the receding flow of the vital current, exhalation takes place. The throbbing of the heart, Its expansion, the diastole, and contraction, the systole, correspond with the flow of prana. But the rapidity of these inward and outward, forward and backward movements of prana varies in different organisms. The influences which establish this individuality, inseparably associated with the correspondencies between the macrocosm and the microcosm, are the subject of the next chapter. The laws governing the flow of solar prana to the earth and round about it apply equally to all the planets and constellations, but with this difference. The states of tattvic matter in and about every such center are variously modified, and every planet has a dominating tattva. Just as Prithvi is preeminent upon Mother Earth, it is this radical difference of tattvic activity which makes all conjectures upon the possibilities of life upon the other planets absolutely futile. Till minds can grasp the conception of other planes of life maintained by subtler vibrations, or, in terms of modern science, different chemical affinities with totally changed nervous systems and physical structure. The need of the hour is to better understand these earth bodies of ours, these vehicles intended to facilitate the soul's activities, to recognize that they are always in the making, and that influences undreamed of by the materialist are ever active in the making. Life is a matter of moment to moment, of unceasing change. Thought is the great dynamic power which determines the nature of the vibrations we draw to us. Directed by a soul-governed will, we can make them as harmonious and favorable as needs require, and the deeper, fuller, and slower we breathe, the more do we facilitate these natural operations, upon the perfection of which depends the physical well-being. Spend no breath in denying evil, but steadfastly affirm health.